at the 9th edition of the Kolkata Literary Meet, the 7th consecutive one here at the Victoria Memorial Hall, and from the 6th consecutive one with Tata Steel as a prefix to the whole festival, supporting the whole festival, holding it together. Thank you very much for being here this morning for this inaugural session, which will be short and sweet. May I request our dignitaries to take their place on the dais. I would like to request our chief guest, Joanne Harris, to kindly come up on the dais. Joanne Harris, as you know, is a very celebrated author of the Chocolat trilogy fame and does not need any introduction to this erudite audience of Kolkata. Of course, during her tenure, she has also been an avid perfume journalist, lending her sweet and wonderful fragrance to a lot of occasions where she has graced the occasion. And of course, has been cooking a whole lot of dishes through cookbooks that she has written, if I'm not mistaken, if I know right. So please kindly take your seat. Thank you very much for being here. I would now like to request Mr. Chanakya Chaudhary, Vice President Corporate, Tata Steel, to kindly come up and take his seat on the dais. May I now request Dr. Joyanto Sengupta, Secretary and Curator of Victoria Memorial Hall, to kindly come up and take his seat. And of course, last but not the least, this whole series and this whole literary meet, which would not have been possible without the active engagement of its director, Malawika Banerjee. We also have Kunal Basu here, who has the very honorable task of reading out a message from Sri Moni Shankar Mukherjee, who is indisposed and could not be present here today. So Kunal, welcome onto the dais. Okay, that completes the dignitaries on the dais. There are no more vacant chairs, as I can see. And I would now like to request Dr. Joyanto Sengupta, Secretary and Curator of Victoria Memorial Hall, to welcome the audience.
Ms. Joanne Harris and Kunal Basu, eminent authors that we are privileged to have with us to inaugurate the Tata Steel Kolkata Literary Meet. Mr. Chanakya Chaudhary, Vice President of Corporate Services at Tata Steel, the chief sponsor of the Literary Meet. Ms. Malawika Banerjee, my co-host and director of the meet, distinguished participants and guests, ladies and gentlemen. I'm truly glad to be back on this stage to perform a cliched ritual that I look forward to through the year, which is to warmly welcome you on behalf of everybody in the Victoria Memorial Hall family to this inaugural program of the Tata Steel Kolkata Literary Meet 2020. Like the previous 6 years that we have had the meet on these grounds, it will bring you a week-long or almost week-long extravaganza of stimulating conversations on literature and the creative arts, featuring many of the foremost authors, artists, and activists of our time. It's a privilege and honor for us to be associated with this meet and to be able to listen to these conversations for all these years. I'm tempted at this point to quote one of my all-time favorite quotations, which is from Sir Albert Einstein, and is on the subject of education. When Einstein was asked by reporters a few years before his death what he understood by education, he responded, and I quote from you, "When you have grown old and you have forgotten everything that you were ever taught in the classroom, what is left behind is your education." And that critical mass of the left behind, in other words, the essence of how we think, speak, and write, is shaped by and distilled from the countless conversations debates, arguments, and discussions that we have in our lifetimes, and that we bequeath to those who come after us. I hope I'm not wrong in saying that over all of these years, the Kolkata Literary Meet has embodied precisely the spirit of such conversations, made with much verve, vigor, and conviction, but always conducted with a civility and a sensitivity to different points of view that is built into this city's history and its cultural DNA. That's the spirit we aim to carry into a glorious 7th year of the Meet. The spirit that sustains conversations that sometimes challenge us and help us to get out of the comfort zone and grapple with our own convictions, but never stars that out of our composure, equanimity, and civility. And that's all I have to say. Enjoy the Meet. Do participate in the conversations. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Jayanta Sengupta. As Dr. Sengupta has rightly pointed out that, you go through an education system and then later on realize that whatever has been left out of that system is what is education for you. And in that sense, of course, literary meets like this have a tremendous contribution to your education, our education, and further education, as we would call it. I would now like to request Sri Chanakya Chaudhary, Vice President, Corporate Services, Tata Steel, to kindly come and address the gathering.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Joanne, Kunal, Jayantoda, and Malawika. We are yet again here on a wintry morning. The weather's been great, and I hope I was told by one of my colleagues that the prediction for the next few days is great. So I'm sure all of us are looking forward to sunny days and brighter sessions. As was being told a short while ago, this is the 7th edition here at Victoria Memorial. And Tata Steel as such has been connected with this event for 7 years. The first one was more as an associate sponsor, and the last 6 one as title sponsor. I think this event, when we started with, and I remember the conversation with Jeet and Malawika, the first year when we got into it, we were a little shaky in terms of how Kolkata would take it, in terms of the venue, iconic venue like this. Second is, what kind of mix of schedules will be made or sessions will be made which will be interesting and entertaining for everyone, for people who come from all walks of life and all age groups. And I'm happy to see a lot of young children here from schools. I'm seeing people my age and a few more. And I think this event has actually grown big in stature year after year. It also gave us the confidence to move out of Kolkata and add a few more meets. We have added in Bhubaneswar and in Ranchi. So in the Eastern Belt, we have 3 events being done along with Malawika and Jeet in Game Plan. And I think it is just that Tata Steel wants to get connected to the community in a way that is enriching both for the community and all of us in Tata Steel. I've seen the lineup today, and I was just going through the schedule for the next few days, and I'm very happy to see not only authors, artists, performing artists, musicians. I saw the name of Mr. Krishna and Shiv Kumar Sharma. We have a similarity. I have something common with Mr. Shiv Kumar Sharma. Both of us come from the same place, Jammu. The only thing is he got the sur and I did not get the sur. So that's about all. But coming back to this event, I think the number of people I've seen who have been attending sessions in the last few years, I remember the first one when we got connected, it was close to about 5,000 to 6,000 footfalls. Last year was 50,000, 10 times higher. And the way I see the session starting today, I think we have to see, Malawika, how do we make more and more people sit? Possibly we'll have to, I know there are 2 venues here, and then we also look at some other clubs to do it, but we could also do some, real-time displays for people to sit somewhere else to see the way the people are coming in. I was asked a question a few days back because we have added something called the Junior Literary Meet. So the thought process behind it was that Junior Kolkata Literary Meet, which is JKLM. But the question came up, why are you calling it Junior? Why can't we call it something different? So I leave that thought with you to think through and see if we want to change it or not. Thanks a lot for everyone to have supported these events all these years, and I'm hoping that this year will be much larger and bigger than the previous years. From a Tata Steel side, I can thank Kolkatans to have supported all our initiatives. We had the run a few weeks back, and I'm sure this event will be bigger than the previous years. All the best, and let's look forward to all the great sessions. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chanakya Chaudhary. Of course, Mr. Chaudhary has said that both Shiv Kumar Sharma and he come from Jammu, and he got the Sur and he didn't. Here is where the alphabet B takes precedence over the alphabet A, because it's better to be Besur than being an Asur. And of course, he has also struck a very optimistic note about the weather and the weather forecast, his tremendous confidence in the forecast of the weather, that we are going to have sunny days ahead. One fervently hopes that this kind of prediction and forecast also holds good for the country as a large. I would now like to request Malawika Banerjee to come up and give us some details, some thoughts behind the conceiving of this particular literary meet and the way forward.
Good morning, friends. I'm tempted to go with the odd indigo line, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, because I see all of you here. Before I start off about what we have in store for you this year, I thought I should just introduce our inaugural panel, which is Shankar, who sadly could not make it. Shankar is a chronicler of this city, and his stories about Calcutta changing from the time he first came here in the 1940s to today was an ideal way to complement Joanne's international acclaim as an author. So sadly, we couldn't get Shankarda here, and he was very disappointed, and it took the advice of the doctor and a firm word from the daughter to actually keep him away from us. But he has sent a message which will be read in English by Kunal and in Bangla by Joyantu Babu. And he has written the longer message in English in deference to Joanne and other friends from outside Calcutta, so that they can hear about what he would have said to us if he were here. I'd like to welcome Kunal to read the message from Shankarda.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. A very warm welcome to the Tata Steel Kolkata Literary Meet in Calcutta. Being an old-fashioned writer, I'd never been a great believer in literary meets where writers from different parts of the world come, discuss their problems, and share their agonies and ecstasies in front of admirers and critics. We in Calcutta had been dominated by creative authors who were never believers in self-publicity. They spent their midnight oil in exploring the mysteries of a highly complex society and believe that they have the right to communicate one way and that the author is not the member of a two-way debating society. Some of our great writers belonging to the golden age of Bengali prose believed that writers should avoid meetings and never promote themselves, as publicity is degrading. Over the years, I've changed my mind, and I've felt the need of attending literary meets, exchanging ideas, and telling people what I'm trying to share. With this in mind, I attended one meeting last year at the Victoria Memorial and enjoyed it so much that I agreed well in advance to be present at the inauguration of the next Tata Literary Meet here. I was looking forward to sharing my view, the views of a boy from Bonga, the land of Pother Panchali, and how his father shifted to Howrah on the west bank of Bhagirathi, and how a great city became a subject of his exploration in an extraordinary way, and how he, as an author, chronicled the journey struggling all the way to earn a living, trying to save and serve his mother and 8 children. Growing in a city like Calcutta is not an easy task. It is full of excitement, and there are fascinating stories in every narrow lane. I never expected to be an author. My father, who lost his parents at an early age, had also wanted to be an author and spent the first part of his youth as an aspiring dramatist for the professional stage. Enjoyed some early success, but later decided to become a successful lawyer. He was very fond of the professional stage, but also worried all the time that it is not a stable profession and exceptional people suffer unnecessarily from shortage of funds. In his new profession, he always regretted the loss of the early years in pursuit of literary fame and was always afraid that his children ran the risk of inheriting the attraction to fame. No wonder, when as a student I wrote my first article in the school magazine, he was annoyed and curtly advised me to stop writing and give more attention to arithmetic, which was my weakest subject. I don't know what would have happened to me and my career had my father lived long enough to send me to good colleges and universities. He died very young. I was just 13 years and very soon realized there is not much money left, and I must earn money for my mother, who was looking after 8 children in a rented house. How I started looking for jobs is a fascinating part of my life story. Equally fascinating is my chance encounter with the last Englishman practicing law in Calcutta High Court, and I discovered a fascinating new world where law and litigation changed my attitude towards life. Noel Barwell had a long association with Calcutta, and he very kindly shared with me some of his family stories, the Calcutta connections, and how they had enriched their lives. Noel Barwell once took me around the city and showed me the magnificent Writers' Building, and jokingly revealed that one of the early Barwells was its owner, and foolishly sold it to the East India Company. I was told that had his forefather been prudent, he could have left it to Noel Barwell as its owner, and that would have meant that I could be the sole inheritor of Writers' Building, as Noel Barwell had no children, and I was his favorite employee. Things, however, did not go well, as Noel Barwell suddenly had a heart attack while arguing a case in Madras, and all my dreams of a comfortable life disappeared. I picked up another humble job, that of a typist in the famed Dalhousie Square. Ladies and gentlemen, finding no other way of expressing my gratitude to the last British lawyer practicing in Calcutta High Court, I wrote my first book on life around the courts. The first attempt was a success, and at a very early part of my life, I became an author in Bengali, which was then passing through its golden age in fiction. From then, it has never been difficult for me to locate subjects, and I've never run short of ideas and subjects. It was here that I met people who told me that you can love many women, but only one city. Such people are not in short supply and are great subjects for great writing. Calcutta is a gold mine of great writing. I've been asked during my trips to Britain and America, what do you write? What is your philosophy? And in self-defense have said, I have a very simple job. Only narrate how the people of Calcutta live and how they lie and how they die. I started my writing by writing about how they litigate in law courts, but there are several other stories left. I'm therefore not worried about looking for other subjects. Calcutta is more than enough for me, not only for me, but 1,000 more fellow writers. It was my desire to talk about the people who live in this overcrowded city. I was getting ready for my talk at the Tata Steel Kolkata Literary Meet. Unfortunately, I'm down with bad health. I've lived in reasonably good health all my life, but this, for the very first time, I've been hospitalized. I was very keen to be present at the Tata meet and tell participants why great cities are gold mines for great books. Unfortunately, I've not been permitted by my doctor to be present at the inaugural ceremony. I offer my apologies to the organizers for letting them down at the last minute. I do hope I get an opportunity next year, and in the meantime, may I wish you a great success in exploring new possibilities in a fascinating profession called storytelling. My apologies to my late father for not listening to his advice and for not keeping away from writing. Apologies once again to my readers and to the authors present, at the festival for my absence. Thank you all. Shankar.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Kunal Basu. Now, Dr. Jayanta Sengupta will read the Bengali version of the same statement.
It's very brief, the Bengali version. I'll read it out. টাটা লিটারারি উৎসবে সমবেত বন্ধুগণ, এই সভায় উপস্থিত থাকবার জন্য উদ্গ্রীব হয়েছিলাম। এক বছর আগে উদ্যোক্তাদের কথা দিয়েছিলাম ভিক্টোরিয়া মেমোরিয়াল প্রাঙ্গণে সশরীরে হাজির থেকে পাঠক পাঠিকাদের নানা প্রশ্নের সরাসরি উত্তর দেব এবং সেই সঙ্গে নতুন যুগের নানা মানুষের কাছ থেকে প্রয়োজনীয় শিক্ষা গ্রহণ করব। কিন্তু শারীরিক কারণে এবং চিকিৎসকদের পরামর্শে তা এবার সম্ভব হচ্ছে না। এর জন্য আমি বিশেষ লজ্জিত এবং সকলের কাছে ক্ষমা প্রার্থী। আশা করি পরের বছর এই অপরাধ খণ্ডন করে আপনাদের প্রত্যাশা পূরণের চেষ্টা করতে পারব। টাটা স্টিল কলকাতা সাহিত্য সমাবেশের সাফল্য কামনা করি। কলকাতা, 22শে জানুয়ারি 2020।
Thank you, Jayanta. Earlier, Malawika Banerjee, whose name abbreviates coincidentally to the initials of our Chief Minister of the state, had very tactfully probably ensured that next year Indigo would be on board as one of the site sponsors by quoting their Indigo line. But then I just want to tell her that, there are two things. One is the expression ladies and gentlemen. There's been a proposal in the British Parliament to do away with this, saying that good morning everybody is supposed to be the thing and not ladies and gentlemen, to keep gender parity. And again, Indigo has got a petition that if it is ladies and gentlemen, why should it be boys and girls? It should be girls and boys. Also from the point of view of logic. So I don't know what they're going to decide on that, but I would like to invite Malawika once again to introduce our chief guest for this inaugural session, Joanne Harris.
I agree with Mr. Raman. In a rainbow world, one shouldn't just be indigo. So now going to the next stage of our inauguration, I'd like to introduce Joanne Harris. Joanne Harris burst into our lives in the late 1990s with a novel as bitter, sweet, dark, and white as its title, Chocolat. Stories travel, and this one certainly did, from page to screen, from city to city, from country to country, and from language to language. Stories travel, and if you ever doubt that, do read Joanne's books. For the first time in India, it is our privilege to welcome you. Welcome, Joanne, to our country, our city, and our festival.
Hi there. It's so wonderful to be here, and thank you for your lovely, warm welcome. And I do apologize for looking a bit sleepy. It's because I've just arrived. I've been here for like an hour and a half, and I'm still acclimatizing to the wonder of all the places that this funny little book, this funny series of stories has taken me. And I have to go back really to the beginning because this is where stories usually start. And I mostly blame my mother for everything. My mother is a French woman, a child of teachers. She married a teacher. She moved to England to be with my father, and they were both teachers in the same school. And what happens when teachers marry teachers is that all their friends are teachers, and they talk about teaching all the time. Now, I'm saying this because I can see a number of teachers in the audience and also a number of students in the audience. I hope those teachers and students have not been coerced to come here. I did not enjoy learning literature at school because I was coerced to read a lot of books that I didn't really enjoy at all. And I would hate it if my books were used for that purpose. But my mother and my father very early decided that I was born to be a teacher. I was raised in a house full of teachers. Everybody was a teacher. And in my defense and theirs, teaching seemed to me to be a very interesting profession. It seemed to be a kind of factory of stories to live in a school, because schools are little communities where almost anything can happen. They are a perpetual stage for tragedy and farce and gossip and dirt and scandal. And by the time I was 7 years old, I realized that those stories were really what interested me. And so I assumed from that age that I would be a teacher. And then I realized as I learned to read, and I was a late developer, it took me a while to learn to read, but when I did, I wanted to read everything. And I realized that it wasn't teaching that I was in love with, it was the stories that came from the community of teaching. And so I went to my mother, aged 8 or 9. You have to understand that my mother is a very frightening woman. She was frightening then, she is still frightening now. And I said to her, you know, I've been thinking about this teaching thing, and I have decided that actually I don't want to be a teacher. I would like to be a writer of stories. And I don't know about your parents, but my mother has the capacity to create silences of a terrifying glacial nature. My mother gave me one of those silences and one of the looks that went with it. And then she took me into a room in our house which was full of books, books from floor to ceiling. We didn't have much furniture because we didn't have much money, but we did have a lot of books. And they were all by French 19th century novelists who had all died penniless in the gutter of syphilis and tuberculosis and poverty. And she said these people were incapable of making a living through writing, and neither will you. It is not a proper job. You must get a proper job with a pension, and you must become a teacher. And so I became a teacher. And I wrote in secret throughout the whole of my teaching life, and I taught in a school which was a factory of stories. And eventually I escaped. I wrote several books. The first book was a vampire novel. I wrote it to annoy my mother because she had banned horror fiction from the house when I was a child. And so as soon as I left the house, I wrote a horror novel. And then when I'd horrified my mother, I wrote another one. And then I wrote something else. I wrote a book which, I have to say by then I had reached the age at which I decided that having experimented with horror novels and ghost stories and having liked them, it wasn't quite my voice. You hear a lot about authors' voices. And one of the things that I've learned in being an author is that your voice doesn't always come straight away. Sometimes you go through phases. I went through phases of copying other people's voices. But with my third book, I found my voice. And by then, my agent had realized that he was not going to make very much money out of my first two novels, the vampire novel and the ghost story. And he was a bit worried because agents like to make money, unlike authors who just basically want to have fun. And he sent my then manuscript to one of his associates in America, a man called Al Zuckerman, who had written a book called How to Write the Blockbuster Novel, because both my novels had been, shall we say, cult successes, which means that they were largely unread. And he would have liked me to have made a lot of money for him, to take a big percentage. And so he sent my manuscript to Al Zuckerman in America to find out why my books weren't selling in America. Because he thought that America was the biggest market in the world, the most important market in the world, and if I didn't succeed in America, then I would never succeed anywhere else. And Al Zuckerman sent me 30 pages of a rejection letter, which went into great detail why I was destined for failure in literature. And I didn't keep it because, unfortunately, I wish I had, but I was making a sculpture from all my rejection letters, and Al Zuckerman's 30-page rejection letter just about finished it off. But I remember what he said. And he said, first of all, yes, you can write a little, but that's not enough. You have to think about your audience. You have to think about your American audience and what they can take. And basically, American audiences like to read stories about Americans, set in American cities. And your book is set in a funny little village in Europe, and nobody cares about that because things don't happen in little villages, they happen in big cities. So you must rethink your approach. Write a story, set it in America, in a big city, give it lots of action. Give it plenty of sex, because I've noticed that your book really doesn't have enough sex in it. There just isn't enough there. And the reason is because there are too many old people in your book, and obviously you can't have the old people having sex, so replace the old people by young people, get them to have sex in America. And would it kill you to have a fist fight or a car chase or, some action in there? And by the way, I don't understand why you've got so much food in your book. Food is not for books. Food is for television shows about food. It's for the table. Just stop writing about food. If you want to write a cookbook, get it off your chest, do that. But otherwise, read some Mary Higgins Clark and learn. And having written my first book to annoy my mother, I wrote my third to annoy Al Zuckerman. And I set in a little village because I lived in a little village. And the school that I taught in was also a little village. And so I knew that little villages are the peak of tragedy, farce, excitement, gossip, and dirt. And I filled it with older people because I happen to think that older people have more stories to tell because they've seen more life. And I made sure that there were no fist fights and no car chases and no bombs exploding, but I did fill it with food. And I called it chocolat, and it did okay. It went to Hollywood. It went to, I think, 56 different countries, including this one. It's taken me all across the world. And it was its 20th anniversary last year. And I'm still in a state of surprise and shock and gratitude that this little story has seemed to, just keep moving. It's moved all around the world. It's brought me here. And I'm very grateful that it has, because this is what stories do. They're not there to educate you or to make you pass exams or anything like that. They are there to connect people. Stories are basically the best kind of magic you can find. And I believe in magic. I think that magic is the power to change things, whether you do it with a magic wand and incantations in Latin, or whether you do it just by making marks on a piece of paper and sending that piece of paper across the world to a country where people can read it and maybe laugh or cry or get angry or get hungry or want to eat chocolate. It's about getting a reaction from people from nothing but words, nothing but a story. And stories have that power. They have the power to connect us. If the words are written properly, if they're set out correctly on the page, they can make somebody across the world that you have never met and that you may never meet do something, change the way they see the world. I've got about 40 or 50 letters from people who have opened chocolate shops because they read my little book about chocolate, or they saw the movie of my little book about chocolate, and they changed their lives. And they write to me about this. Even now, 20 years later, they write to me. They say, I read your book, and suddenly I realized what it was that I wanted to do. And what it was to open a chocolate shop in my city, and I have done it, and here's a picture of it, and that was because of you. And that's most moving and touching and also a little frightening. Because as a teacher, and I was a teacher for 15 years, I was aware that sometimes if you got a word wrong, if you did something or said something that was unfair, then you could mark somebody for life. But I only taught a few thousand pupils. I have got 50 million readers. And I have no idea what effect those books have had on them, but I'm very, very grateful for everybody who has been touched or has recognized some part of themselves or their family in my books. And I'm very grateful for the fact that my books have brought me here, to you, to this wonderful city, which I fully hope to explore a little this week when my jet lag wears off. So thank you very much for your welcome. Thank you very much to the Kolkata Literary Meet for inviting me. And I'm very much looking forward to this week with you, and I hope you'll come to some of my events, and I hope that when I'm around, you'll be able to say hello if you've read my books, and if you've not, there's still time. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you very much, Madam Joanne Harris. Not only does she put in a lot of food in her writings, even in a brief address like this, she peppers it with a lot of food for thought for whoever has been listening over here. It has been quite an autobiographical kind of address. Thank you very much for that. And when I look back at it, it sounded like the preface for a forthcoming book. And she, of course, asked the question, what happens when a teacher marries a teacher? And if her words were to be taken, then the answer would be the offspring gets married to teaching and writing. And that's the way things work. Now, in the traditional way that the Kolkata Literary Meet is always inaugurated, may we request Madame Harris and our friend Kunal Basu and the other dignitaries here to kindly go right on the canvas there and declare the festival open. We don't light lamps, we write on the canvas. Just be with her so that she's not alone on the thing. All right, thank you very much. And of course, as the festival director, Malawika Banerjee has the privilege of the last word at this inaugural session.
Thank you, Mr. Raman. Just a quick word that it's one of our most literary programs over the next 6 days. 5 days is right from morning to evening, and on the 6th, we have an epilogue with Nobel laureate Abhijit Banerjee at the steps of the Victoria Memorial. This year, conversations. The word meet is what I would like to focus on among Kolkata Literary Meet, because it's when you meet new ideas, when you meet diverse ideas, and when you meet divergent ideas, ideas that are opposite to what you believe, that true conversation happens. And when you shut the door to conversation, that's when you open a window for confrontation. So as Joyanto Babu said, let's keep this platform diverse and divergent and civil. Enjoy the conversations, come for many of them. We have lovely sessions on humor writing, a lot of sessions on music, and the book, the word is at the base of all that you'll see next 6 days. Enjoy the festival. We brought it together with a lot of love. I hope you accept it with a lot of enthusiasm. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Malawika. May I request the dignitaries to kindly take their seats among the audience for the next session. At the very beginning, I promised that this opening session would be short and sweet, and we sometimes keep our promises also. So now just sit back and wait for the next session, which would be part of the Junior Kolkata Literary Meet.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Raman sir, for welcoming everyone to Tata Steel Kolkata Literary Meet 2020 in your usual style. I shall now call on stage Ruchira Das from Think Arts, who has curated the Junior Kolkata Literary Meet, to start off JKLM 2020. Ruchira.
Thank you, Sukanya. It's so lovely to be back here, and even lovelier to see so many young people in the audience. Thank you, students and teachers, for coming all the way. As you know, this is the 4th year that we've been curating the edition for junior readers. And each time we see all of you, we just get more energy to keep on going and bringing many more sessions with authors, workshops, and creative engagements with all of you. I'm sorry for the delay, but I hope you did enjoy the lovely words that you got to hear. And we'll start the session by a session by the lovely Archana Garodia Gupta. Archana Gupta is a co-author of the best-selling A History of India for Children and the Women Who Ruled India. She has been an expert on Kaun Banega Crorepati and is one of India's leading quizzers, champion of champions of BBC Mastermind in India. She is currently the national chair of the FICCI MSME Committee. She leads the SME task force on the BRICS Financial Committee from India. Archana qualified with an MBA from the Indian Institute of Management, Ahmedabad, and this is her first visit to JKLM. Welcome, Archana.